Hello, Jody, and welcome to AI for Equity. For anyone listening who hasn't come across your work yet, Jody is the founder of Gentia, which is described as the world's first AI-powered psychosocial manager. And for those thinking, what on earth is a psychosocial hazard? We're talking about things like toxic workloads, bullying, poor leadership, lack of autonomy, the invisible things at work that genuinely damage people. Jody has over 13 years of expertise in this space, and Gentia uses AI to turn those hidden risks into something organizations can actually see and act on. Jody, would love to hear the story of how you got here. What made you decide this was the problem that you needed to solve?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all, Leah and Jenny. Love what you do, and really excited to be chatting today. I'm on the other side of the world, so as you both know, I'm in Australia, and my business partner and I actually came together probably 30 years ago in a completely different capacity, and we started Australia's became Australia's largest early education facility. At the time that we started it, it was a little seed in our mind. We got a little office in the centre of Sydney and started to plan out how it might look. And it was basically an organisation that was very value and purpose and mission driven. And our mission was to get women back into the workplace and to provide high quality care and education to their children, because very, very early in our career, we'd started in early education. So we believed in early education. We understood that the first 5 years of a child's life shapes who they become. And we could see that if we could have this business model where we could actually use corporate clients to help facilitate the quality that we were able to provide, we could in turn give them the ability to retain their women, to have better diversity. We could we could change the trajectory of 60% of women coming out of our universities and under 40% being represented in senior leadership and board positions. And when we sort of flipped that to men, we had the absolute opposite. We had, maybe 40% coming through university and 80% in senior leadership and board positions. And we knew from the women groups that we were part of, a big part of that was when women go to have their families, that's when we were seeing them exit. And so as a couple of women who went, hang on a minute, why are they not accessing early education? And we know how good it can be. We started to see some of the problems, and, we're getting into like affordability, accessibility, but quality was also a big one. And so a big purpose of that company was to ensure quality. Well, you can't have quality if you don't look after your people. So probably at that time was where we wouldn't have talked about psychosocial. I didn't know the word back then, but we were definitely doing that within our organisation, because as two women who'd been in early education positions ourselves, we understood what the staff had to do to deliver the high quality. So we saw it as our role. Our role was to ensure they had the environment and the conditions and the tools and the leaders, etc., to do that. And we ran that business probably differently to a lot of the competitors in the space that we were in. So, for instance, most large early education groups will have their centre managers fill spaces. So one of their big KPIs will be you need to keep it full, because keeping it full keeps the money coming in. We looked at that and said, oh, our most qualified educator is our centre manager, which means that's the quality person. I don't want the quality person focused on an administrative job that's probably going to get in the way of quality. So I'm going to have a different person do that. So we did things very, very differently. A lot of pushback. I mean, we had the same competing priorities as anybody. We had to get investors in, and, there's a chicken and an egg game. You got to get landlords to let you put centers in their buildings, and we have to fit them out, and you make promises to your investors, and there's lots of things that are going to compete with the quality. So you've got to be able to do both. It's very hard to do. When you get it right, you see lower turnover, you see better engagement, lower sick days, better innovation, and of course, better quality. And so, because we never lost sight of the purpose of why we existed, yes, we had to make all this other stuff happen, but that meant we had to be critical thinkers, we had to problem solve more. But again, that trade off was very powerful. And so, through the course of doing that, we learned what value you get when psychosocial safety is done well. At the same time, and I'm going back 25 years, our clients start asking for ways to reach people outside of their head offices. So we're talking at this time, it's families, work-life balance, early education. We say, well, why don't we have a technology platform? It's all exploding on the cloud. Everybody's putting platforms in for their HR systems and learning and development. And so we say, well, we could put one in and give you work-life balance solutions and meet all the people in your company, and we'll have webinars and e-learning and surveying and all that sort of stuff. And so when we did exit the
Just jumping in.
yes,
So this journey has been one of quite a disruptive journey, hasn't it? You've been a bit of a disruptor in the field you've been in. You've been really wanted to think differently, even though you're having the same trade-offs as other people, which I think is a really important lesson, because sometimes people say, well, in a way, the economic constraints get in the way of innovation. But you've sort of said, no, I can innovate even though there are these economic constraints. And then you've been brave enough to jump into technology. Would you say you're an early adopter of tech? Were you just responding reactively? Were you someone who saw this on the horizon and thought, actually, we're getting into this? I'm curious about that jump was it
it
foresight? Was it reaction? Was it, natural evolving?
think we had a business model that wasn't like we would add more centers, and we grew it from seed to being the largest within Australia. We had 20, 30 centers, lots of staff, but to grow it outside of that was a little bit like, oh, how do we, we could add, say, vacation care and things like that. But when we looked at the technology, we said, wow, that is actually an avenue that we could really add some value and some growth and scalability to this. And I think we always knew that the childcare was something that we probably wouldn't stay in forever. It's a service business. It's very stressful. And so it was something that when we felt we built it to what we wanted, we did what we set out to do. We wanted to know what the next thing would be. And technology was exciting. And for us, that was probably part of the excitement was, I'm not going to need thousands of people. I can go off and do this with less people and probably less pressures. Like that service delivery business was a hard gig. And it was exciting, and it was in that space when all of the Salesforce and those SaaS cloud companies were just emerging, and it was we're not technology engineers, but we dabble, we use it, we're excited by it. So we took it with us. And when we took it with us, at that time, the workplace was very disruptive and changing, and clients didn't actually know what they wanted. So we kind of said, well, why don't we just keep the technology in an R&D phase and let it support some consulting? And we have been in this space a long time. We've got a lot of connections and people that we know, and let's just give back and actually help them figure out what the future of work's going to look like, and what their strategies are going to be. So we were consultants, and the technology sort of supported that. And that was a business called Balance to Life. And we did that for a long time. So we had this technology that would support it with e-learning modules and 360 surveys and all sorts that we kept adding. And then along comes AI. And that was just for us the game changer. So that's when Gentia actually emerged.
Fantastic.
Wow, I love that so much.
Yeah. I'm just going to say, just in case, because I always think people are listening to us and sometimes we use lots of terms and people might, depending on where you are in the world, you might not be familiar with them. So SaaS is software as a service, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're talking about R&D, and when you were talking about it, you're talking about research and development, aren't you? Am I
Yes.
right? Yeah. So I think just in case, I think it's good for us to explain, because I was listening back to some of our podcasts recently and I was thinking, if I was brand new to this, would I know what people are talking about?
Well,
So,
no, it's an
yeah,
interesting
I feel
point.
like
We
that's
do
always,
a leadership program, sorry to diverse, but one of the ways that we get people to we part of what psychosocial safety and risks that you see will be how leaders interact, because as we know, and go and ask anybody in any workplace, if you like your job, a lot of it's got to do with who you report into. So if you report into somebody that you like, that is uh, fair and reasonable and helps you grow and all that sort of stuff, it makes a profound difference to how you go home each day. And so a big part of what we do and have done for a long time is develop the capabilities of leaders. Jenny, I know that's your space, so you
yeah.
know it very well. And one of the things that we do with leaders is we have to get them to see their blind spots, and that's not an easy thing to do. And when you get good at coaching, you learn little techniques, and one of the techniques and areas we look at is inclusion. So we do this sort of thing where we talk about have you ever been excluded where somebody didn't mean to exclude you? And the big one that comes up is acronyms. So it's that,
Yes.
yes, I've sat in the meeting and you, because we do it so naturally. So I'm quite glad that you pulled me up there, because it is one of those things that you can be thinking, oh, I feel a bit out of it. And we know from the research, exclusion is a toxic behavior, but it can be a very unintentional toxic behavior. So
Absolutely unintentional.
100%.
and
Yeah.
that's probably a big, when we do our leadership development work, a lot of the stuff that we're doing is working with people to help them see those kind of the shadow that they're casting, and let them be own and understand it, because you know there's a thought of a toxic behavior means I'm a horrible person, and actually we've probably all engaged in toxic behaviors. And by toxic, we mean we're sending an unintentional threat to somebody, and what we really want to be doing is sending rewards.
Love that.
Exactly. I love that so much. I am interested about the way this looks in practice, in real life. Can you walk us through what it would look like when you go into a company? What do you usually find that no one was expecting? I find it so interesting about Gentia that you don't point fingers at individuals. I really love that. I think that it can be really easy to go in and be like, you're the problem, you're the problem, you're the problem. But as we know, a lot of these problems are systemic.
Systemic's the word. So you just you answered the question. uh, Basically, it's when we very first started, we were under so we started work-life balance, very quickly became holistic well-being, because it just grew and grew, and organizations wanted us to add more and more. The problem with well-being was the word in and of itself over-indexed on the individual. So there was this, oh, that would be a meditation app, or that would be my program, and I've got my pillars, and I've got nutrition, and I've got fitness, and I've got finances, whatever. It didn't matter how many pillars, whether it was 3, 5, 7, they're all the same. And because we'd go in as consultants, we would actually go, okay, well, I want to get all of your organizational information. So policies, procedures, job descriptions, KPIs, engagement scores, turnover statistics. And I want to get a really clear picture of what the employee experience looks like. I'm then going to create persona profiles and journey maps, and I'm going to validate that, and I'm going to survey people, interview people, have focus groups. Lot of manual work to do that, but what we're actually doing is bringing information in from lots of parts of the business. And what you start to see is, especially in HR, what HR's done is, in the past 10, 15 years, it's gone from a business function that was primarily there to ensure the organization was legally compliant to now having talent acquisition, REM and benefits, um, work health and safety, organizational development, leadership development. I think there's probably dozens in big companies. And each area looks at spaces in silo. And when you bring it all together, that's when you get under the cover and get 5 clicks down and see they're all working on the same thing. They just have no idea where it eventuated. So an example might be, let's suppose I go into a customer contact center and I've got L&Ds working on the fact that customer service isn't consistent. So they're doing customer service training. Work health and safety have done a survey and they can see that people are stressed. So they've got all this stress management stuff going on. And then the people and culture team can see that engagement is low. And so they're trying to bring in some benefits and KPIs to get that metric up. And when you get all of the information, bring it all together, understand it, validate it, what you start to find is it'll be something like, the way you measure customer service is perceived as unfair to the employee and to the team leaders, because you're probably measuring it from a customer survey that happens at the end of a call. They know that happens when, let's suppose it's a bank and the bank's issued a letter and the letter says, I'm going to put your interest rates up, and everybody calls up and complains. You can give the best customer service in the world. You're not getting a good rating. They think it's unfair. So what they then do is they over-index on their productivity KPI to make up for it. Nobody's noticed that because they're all looking at their separate areas. When we over-index on productivity, what happens to the people that we lead? We start to manipulate. We start to say, no, you can't have a bathroom break. No, you can't have a break if you've taken 4 complaints in a row. We're dehumanizing people, and everybody has this desire to want to know what they do matters, want to know that they matter, want to know that they're valued. And so as morale drops, then you see leaders start to justify their behavior, because it actually starts to become almost true, because when morale is on the floor and you say, yeah, you can go to the bathroom, where does everybody congregate? In the bathroom, because I don't want to come back. So the leader learns, I don't let anybody go to the bathroom. So it's complex and messy, but you have to bring it all together. And as consultants, we know manually it's a long-winded process. It's not very scalable. And by the time you give an organization that level of detail in today's workplace, it's changed because they've implemented 5 things by the time you've got it to them. So for us, that's where AI has become so exciting.
Gosh, there's a lot you
Yeah.
said.
So there's so much to unpack there. There's so many different layers. What I really am struck by is how human-centered your company is and your approach is. And I think that that is where we're seeing such a wave of companies go wrong, I feel like, at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that the point you made about the data helping, it could help us be more human, and I think that's something one of our guests said before. Could AI help us be more human in the way and not dehumanize our colleagues? And that would be a fantastic thing. But also, as you were speaking, I thought actually what you're creating could create organizational memory. And so many organizations, the HR person, human resources person leaves, and then what's been done before, everyone just stops it. Oh, I don't know why we did that activity, so let's not do it anymore. Let's do this new thing. And because now the data is all there and combined, we have that memory. We know what works, we know what doesn't work, and we know the impact that one thing has on the whole system. So I love how you're talking about this, because I think working with large organizations as I do, sometimes a person goes and everything stops that they were doing and no one remembers why they did it or how they did it or who they did it with. And this can keep that memory going in a way that is often lost. So that sounds really, really interesting. And the other thing is that organizations are not always great at putting the data together and having all of the data, and you are helping them do that. But they must have it in the first place. So how do you ensure that they've collated the data so that they can put the data in? Is there more you do on that, or do you just work with what they have?
We work with what they are sitting on mountains and they know it, but it's mostly a mix of structured and unstructured. But it's the unstructured that's difficult to make sense of. So if you get and if you anyone that works in with AI knows, it's what you put in is what you get out. So if you put garbled stuff in, you get garbled stuff out, especially when you're building with it, because you don't have the front end stuff that you get with Claude and Chat GPT and things like that. You get the raw API that's just that plug-in bit. And so a lot of work goes into cleaning up the data, making sense of the data, giving the AI the ability to understand the data. Uh, and then in the enterprise, you've got to be thinking about, is the system closed? Where's that information going? How are we keeping it safe and secure? How are we making sure that it's ethical? What are the things, like if there's a little bias in there, it's going to be exemplified or, magnified rather, if I don't understand it. So there's huge amounts of evaluations and testing and that sort of stuff that goes on to build something like we build. It's not so straightforward as plugging in and putting a few prompts in.
Okay, and I think I've jumped into Leah's space here. I know that in your business, Leah, there's the data is key. I don't know if you wanted to say more about that and how this interacts with what you do, and I don't know if you had more questions about the data aspect.
I think it's really interesting seeing data being used as a tool for good. That's what I do. That's my space. I think that data can be used for amazing things or for bad things. And I'm just interested in learning, I guess, a bit more about the tools that you use to collate the data, to put it out there, to make it work. Because yeah.
Yeah, so we have a combination of, I have team members that will build pipelines that actually step through what happens to the data. So it gets cleaned up, it gets tagged, it gets verified. It then might get redacted in certain parts to make sure that it's secure. Then it is fed into a RAG system. So that's where we can, the retrieval, what is it, augmented, uh the G's escaping me, but yeah, that actually makes sense of, allows the AI to pick out the parts of the data that it needs, because it's got a lot of data. So you need to set it up so that there's it's technical, and anyone technical listening will understand, but AI is built in a sort of numbers vectors type setup, so the AI needs to know what to go and grab. And the way that we actually deal with the unstructured data is we build context maps. So we use programs. There's a organization called Neo4j. They allow us to build context graphs, and we've got a partnership with them. So we actually have a pipeline where when we take information from a company, we're able to turn it into a context graph of that organization. So their industry, their core values, their policies, procedures actually mapped out so that the AI can follow those traverses and know where it's going for what information. And when we test our systems, a lot of work goes into, in the AI world, we call it evals. Everything gets shortened, and it's an acronym for evaluating. A lot of evaluating, a lot of testing. And when you do the testing, you see when you're setting up those pipelines, cleaning that data, using those graphs, the outcome of what you get versus when you don't is significantly better. And in a space like we're in, where we have to be enabling businesses to see whether they're compliant or not, being accurate is not something that you can't be very, very high on. You don't want to be saying to somebody, you got to prompt it 5 times. I want to prompt it 1 time, and I want to get that accurate answer. And I don't want to have to sit and check it in too much detail, because we're seeing this in AI. People are finding that they're using the tools, but the checking and the context switching and the fact that we're relying on inaccurate information is causing big problems with trust, with collaboration, with uh, and energy levels. So where we should be
Yeah,
making people more efficient and productive, if we don't really thoughtfully think about how we're setting these systems up and where's the human adding value and where do we trust the AI and where do we not, we actually create more problems than we solve.
exactly. I was actually in a conversation with someone yesterday, and they were asking about how I built Dawn, which is my company. For some context, Jody, it's a platform that uses natural language processing and machine learning to track track trends in crime, and to track risk as well. And someone was asking me how I coded it, how I built it, and they were asking me if I used ChatGPT or any of the large language models. And I said no, because up until probably January, they were all very, very bad. And the amount of time that I would spend going back and relearning how to do something, not relearning how to do something, redoing code that already took a long time, through a language model, it would have taken me double the time to go back and check it and make the amendment. And I think it's knowing when to use it and when not to use it as well. It's
Yeah.
really important. And if you're spending more time getting a prompt right than you would just doing it yourself, I think it poses the question, like, how can I make this more efficient? And 2, do I need to be using it for this in the first place? Or what measures do I need to put in place so this doesn't happen?
100%. I get good at my job because I make mistakes that I learn from. So I can be the keyboard warrior, and I go to my team, especially my engineers. I'll say, "Well, Claude did say that it should take a week," and they'll say, "Well, go back and tell Claude." And it's like, okay, I'm going to stop there. I don't really
Yes, yeah.
understand.
Yeah, Claude doesn't know everything. The other thing, I think what's coming out of this conversation, which is a really important one for those who either watch or listen to hear, is the difference between when we're talking about AI. As when people are talking about AI, a lot of the time they are just talking about Claude, Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, DeepSeek, all of these. That's what people are often talking about. But actually, the AI that's going to make the difference in our lives is the AI that people are creating for specific use cases, like both of you are doing. Yeah, the things that we're bringing into organizations in a very bespoke way that are going to help a real problem and are specifically designed to do that. And I think it's really important for this distinction, because I think that the work you both are doing is the thing that's going to really move us on. The LLMs, yeah, we're going to write better emails. We're going to do some things faster and easier, and we're also going to put a lot of work slop out there. But that's not, I don't think, what's going to change the world. This week, I don't know if you saw that people have found that Microsoft Copilot has now written in the terms and conditions that it's an entertainment tool. So they're really abdicating any responsibility for
Yeah.
anything that's incorrect. They're
Mm.
saying this is entertainment. So don't trust anything it says. This is all for fun. When it has been sold as a business tool that integrates with everything in your whole system. And so it's really important to differentiate between entertainment tools where there's no responsibility if they get it wrong, and real AI tools that make a difference in your organization that require a lot more work, a lot more bespoke, but they're especially for a purpose, and they make a huge difference. And I really
Yeah.
like that we're bringing that into today's conversation, actually.
I think it's so interesting about Gemini saying that it's for entertainment
It was
purposes.
Copilot.
Oh,
Copilot.
Copilot.
Yeah.
Copilot saying that it's for entertainment purposes. I just think, they've spent so long trying to integrate it into people's daily lives as a product that can be used for anything, to now backtrack and be saying this. I think it's really entertaining. Not entertaining, interesting. And not only is it interesting, but it poses the question, what do they know that they're trying to get ahead of,
I
almost,
think they're
maybe?
trying not to get litigation.
Exactly, because we're seeing
I
so
think they're just
many
saying,
lawsuits happening
yeah,
for ChatGPT, especially, like, I'm seeing so much for ChatGPT. And I recently completely downgraded my account, and now I have a free plan. Seeing the difference from paying even £10 a month to zero is like day and night. It's not
really.
only is it less accurate, it's giving me like complete, like, just wrong
Makes it
answers to
up.
questions. It just makes it up. And I think that's so interesting. So I can imagine what,
But it
yeah,
comes out
I can understand.
very confident, don't you think? I think
Yes,
that's where it's
It really
dangerous.
does.
When you get to see it, it seems obvious, but it can be if you're fast, sort of, you can imagine people just thinking, oh, I mean, I'm sure if you work in insurance or customer service or something, you must just see it all the time. Like the complaints must be just through the roof because people are teachers and things like that, with parents sitting there tapping away on Chat GPT. My child says, it's like, oh dear, there's definitely some. And I think one of the things we've been very conscious of is where we are now is not where we're going to be even in 3 months' time, in the sense of the cost. And we're conscious of every time we call that API and every time we use GPT and Claude, we know the compute power behind this. There's an ethical element to that. So if I can do something that I'm not really interested in saving a little bit of time or producing some fancy picture or something like that. We're interested in how do we solve better problems, and I'm very fascinated by it, but I'm conscious of that side of it as well. It's going to become expensive,
Yeah.
and if you're building something that's cool, and it's probably going to be gone in 12 months' time, because people either, it's not going to be $20 a month forever. It can't be.
Exactly. I think it's really interesting as well. This is something that is a recurring theme in the conversations with my friends, especially in my generation. I'm not sure what it's like in Australia, but in the UK, and I think in some parts of America, especially where there's less legislation about AI usage, and ethical AI as well. We're seeing like data centers pop up all over America, data store centers where they're just wiping out whole towns, filling towns with pollution and things like that. And the more that happens, the more people obviously pushing back. My generation were the generation that were walking out of schools, with Greta Thunberg. And I went to those protests. I still am into, making sure that the climate is habitable and safe. And with the rise of generative AI, especially big companies, people are really, really pushing back and saying, no, I'm not going to use AI at all. I personally think that the wording should be, I'm not going to use generative AI, because AI in general is so intertwined in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
Like AI is our spam filter, it's our calculator. It is, my Mondo app that can tell me exactly how much I'm spending and where I'm spending it and how to keep my budget down for the next month. It's all those different things. But I do think generative AI, the ethical questions really are there. And not only are they there, they're staring us right in the face every single time we use a generative AI tool. And I think, in the next 3 months, maybe we'll see more data centers, or maybe we'll see some legislation that clamps down on them being built. We're not having them being built yet in the UK, but I think it'll be interesting to see where the next 6 months take us.
Yeah, and what kind of AI moves forward? But I want
Yeah,
to really think
exactly.
about the leadership aspect, and to be honest, I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about framing poor leadership as a safety hazard before. So that framing is quite unique. It's quite disruptive, and I'm really interested in it. I imagine it can be a quite confronting thing to put in front of a leadership team. You potentially are a safety hazard to the people that you lead, because it's kind of saying you might be the problem. What happens in the room when you do that in front of a senior leadership team or a group of leaders? How do they take it? How do they respond?
We do a lot of work initially on setting up the people that are coming into that to say, like, we call it like showing up and getting real. And it's a bit like saying, if you think of me as a personal trainer, don't tell me you don't want to work out, because I don't really, there's no point. So already I'm saying you got to come in and be prepared to get out of your comfort zone, to look at the blind spots that you see, to be prepared that you want the aim is for you to own and understand the shadow that you cast, so that you can send people home better than they came to you, and you can basically understand that the way you interact with people profoundly affects how they go home each day. We give them some data. People like evidence, so things like the Harvard University study on human happiness, where they found that the biggest determinant of health and happiness as we age is the connections and relationships we have with other people. So if you think about that from a workplace perspective, we're having lots of interactions. Add to that the fact that you as a leader have some authority, you have the ability to make changes and to call the shots, basically, then your interactions matter even more. And again, a lot of the data points to leaders matter more than partners and spouses and GPs, and like to people's health. There's actual data on that. Then we actually, I guess, again, touching into your territory, Jenny, more into coaching and trying to get people to see it for themselves, rather than me say, do you realize you're not a very inclusive leader? It's more like, okay, well, we've established that we can exclude people accidentally. Let's look at now how we approach inclusion. And so you might say, last week we all talked about how busy we are, because people are very happy to put their hand up and tell you that they are rushed, hurried, and stressed all of the time. And then again, using the data, we say, do you know there's a study by Princeton University did a study called the Good Samaritan experiment, and they basically had a group of seminary students where they gave different variables on delivering a talk on being a good Samaritan, so basically helping other people. And the two different variables were, one group were put under time pressure and basically told, you're late, you better get to that talk, you haven't got very long, I'll meet you over at the hall to do the talk. The other group had time. So you've got a bit of time, I'll see you there in 5 minutes, like we'll have time to prepare. What they didn't know was, on the way to deliver the talk, an actor was planted on the ground, laying, moaning and groaning. The people in a rush were 6 times more likely to step over the person moaning and groaning on the ground than the people who were not in a rush. What that tells us is people are not inherently bad. They're not inherently doing the wrong thing. But when you put people under the conditions where they're rushed, hurried, stressed, they act outside of accordance to their values. We probably all do it. I picture the scenario of maybe, I don't know, heading to a job interview and seeing a dog running along the side of the road and being like, I'm late. What do I do? Do I stop and save the dog? It's going to take, you kind of know there's a part of you that might just think someone else is going to have to deal with it, where the right thing to do would be to stop and help someone find the owner of the dog. And I think when people see that, it destigmatizes then that it's okay to get it wrong. And then we can sort of talk about things like maybe let's rate how much you value inclusion. Like, how much do you intend to be inclusive? And people say, oh, 9 out of 10. Like, that's really important. How inclusive do you feel? I'm very included. I'm very included in my team. And okay, so you're rushed, you're hurried, you feel included, you value it. How much do you plan for it? How much do you actively make plans to be inclusive? And you watch the penny drop with people and they'll go, I don't. And then, okay, and we did establish you could accidentally, if you're not actively including, you might be accidentally excluding. So let's have a look so it's that sort of work that's more impactful than chucking the mirror in someone's face, because and I'm talking to you, Jenny, you're probably the expert, but that's how we do it. And we tie it back to a risk, because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is like exclusion is where people shrink back. They're less likely to be psychologically safe. They're less likely to speak up. Well, that's a risk to their psychological well-being. Poor delegation means people don't have clarity in what they're doing. That's a risk. Because psychosocial risks, actually, in our country, we've legislated it and we have definitions for it. So if you don't manage change in a way that brings people along, that is a psychosocial risk and you can be fined for it. They understand that. And it makes sense to them when you explain it properly, because they will have probably experienced it. They will say, yes, I see how change is difficult for people. It's not natural. And let's not pretend it's always good. It can be hard. So it's not saying, oh, let's all go on the nice learning journey, because sometimes change is really not so great. And that's where, again, if you're honest with people, and our coaches are pretty, I think where we resonate is we're quite comfortable to say, I don't get this right myself all of the time. I can tell you all of the things I still get wrong.
No, great messages that you've shared and absolutely resonate with the work that we do. And I love the framing. If you're not actively including, then it's likely that you're excluding. I
Yeah.
think it's a really strong message. And the fact that, you connect with the human being, which is imperfect. And I love that Good Samaritan, piece of research. I'm going to look that up because, it sounds like something that would help a lot of people
John Darley
understand.
and I'm not great at remembering, about 1973, I think. It's a good, people resonate with that sort of stuff too, because it's like, oh, it just takes the stigma out of not feeling so shameful that I because it doesn't feel great to actually think, I think I'm being I'm excluding people. But it feels great when you put it right.
It really does. It really does. Now we're going to move on to one of my favorite parts of every podcast episode that we do. It's a quick fire round. I feel like you can get such amazing little tidbits of information in such a short amount of time. So, are you ready?
Yes. I think so.
um, don't worry, don't worry. They're not strenuous. What is the workplace hazard that nobody wants to say out loud?
Being niceness. I think being nice. I think being nice is cheap and it's easy, uh, and it often is hiding behind being clear, being really, and we see this in our work. It's I don't want to say that because I want to be nice. Like, no, people don't want you to be nice. They want you to be clear. They want you to be concise. They want you to be transparent. They want you to be, yes, respectful and treat them with dignity, but don't hide behind being nice.
100%. I love that. AI in HR, where does it give you the most hope and where does it make you nervous?
I think it gives me hope, probably not even just in HR, but it gives me hope that you'll be able to automate some of the areas that have typically been they're necessary. So the people that want to in a big organization, I need to know about a policy, a law, how to pay people, how to bring people on. There's a lot of work that happens in HR that can be automated by AI, and that AI can actually then free that time up so that those people can work at the top of their license and they can be doing the work that is more human and requires the power skills of those individuals that they have and unfortunately often don't get to use enough. And hopefully it frees them up to be more collaborative and have more conversations and all that stuff that you picture HR should be doing, but probably often are bogged into the mundane administrative work. So that's the hope. The other side, how did you frame it, Leah?
What gives you hope and what makes you nervous?
Nervous. What makes me nervous is that we think that it's all about reducing headcount and that we get rid of people. And I don't want to. I feel like the human has a place, and I feel like there's that when you do the human work, it's the reading the room, it's we can go in as consultants and we do a combination of surveying and we do interviewing. And as a human interviewer, there's so much that we get out of that we can see and we can uh, just engage and connect. And yeah, there's times where I've had two people and I think, gee, if I'd have had that in a survey, I would have a totally different picture to what I just got because I can see their face, I can see the way they are interacting, even their physical appearance. I've had well-being surveys where I've had fit guys talking about not being healthy enough and not being fit enough and worried about their health and obviously have some sort of, very problem with their physical appearance. And to me, they look like they should be an advert for a gym sort of thing. And then another person walk in who's probably needing some help with morbid obesity, who's talking about how healthy they are. And so their perception and my vision is like, okay, well, maybe I'm framing the question in you're healthy in your mental health. But there's clearly, I probably would have formed a different picture in a survey to an interview. So it's those kind of things that make me nervous that we might over automate.
100%. I hear that. And so this is my final question. If every CEO had to sit with one honest report about their company, what would hit them the hardest?
I think I wonder if they would know or be able to answer and what the answer would be is to do people go home better than when they came in? Are you depleting people or regenerating? Like not even sustaining, but I believe that when work is done well, and my mission is that we send people home better than they came in. And I urge people to say, go to a party or a barbecue. In Australia, it's a barbecue, but it'll be a barbecue for you soon because summer coming. And ask your friends, like, what do you like about it? Do you like your job, firstly? And when people say they do versus they don't, it's not because they're well paid. It's not because they don't have to do very much. It'll be things like, I achieve more than I thought was possible. I am treated with dignity and respect. I like the people that I work with. My manager is helping me grow and is fair and like, and when you work in places that is the reality, you actually can be fueled and fulfilled and you get that sense of growth and accomplishment. And everybody wants to know that they matter. Everybody wants to know that they're valued. And I don't care if it's a manufacturing plant. I've talked to people that clean bins. I've talked to people that work in supermarkets versus people that sit in, so say, glamorous, I'm a lawyer, I'm a graphic designer, sounds all great, was their passion, and they can tell you that they don't like it. So that would be something that I would wonder with a CEO, do you believe you send people home generally, and I don't mean every day, generally better than you found them? And if not, why not?
I love that. And I love that answer so much.
Great way to end the
Yeah.
podcast. There was a huge amount you shared. Really interesting, I think, for those who are not in Australia to think about this psychosocial hazard and risk aspect and how actually you get penalized in Australia, and that sense of what gets measured changes how you focus on it, and how important you put the emphasis of that, and how that connects to leadership and how people can act whether or not there's legislation
Well, I think
around.
unfortunately it has had to be legislated, and that's probably circling back to that last answer is when we bring shareholders and investors and profit and all that stuff that has to happen, and I've been in that situation, and it's harder to do. It's possible to do, but there's shortcuts because it gets in the way, and that's unfortunately where you probably find, I think it will become something universal where governments will realize we
Mhm.
Perfect way to
100%.
end. Thank
Yeah.
you so
Thank you
much. It's
so
been
much,
amazing.
Jodie. Thank you.
Our
No
pleasure.
worries.
Thanks for listening to AI for Equity. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Stay curious, stay bold, and keep using AI to build a fairer future.